We are going to continue with growth theory. We have already completed exogenous economic growth theory. From there,
Test.
can you not do testing as because I'm recording the lecture, right? Please don't test your mics now. Okay, you should have done that at 2:30, not at 3:20. Right? I hope you understand. Please do not on your mics because the lecture is going to be recorded. That will disrupt our recording. Right, topic 2 is on endogenous economic growth theory. References, as I've given you, is Charles Jones, chapters 4 to 6. The same references that we used for topic 1, which is exogenous economic growth theory. Okay, right. So if you remember, what's the difference between exogenous and endogenous? Exogenous, we looked at the Solow model. We looked at the model after Solow, models that criticize Solow's model. They were all looking at element of technology, but in the end, the conclusion under the exogenous model was none of them could explain the existence of technology. Therefore, in this chapter, in this topic, we are going to look at a specific model, Ramu's model, where Ramu tried to explain the existence of technology. If you look at this slide, in the Cobb-Douglas production function, we have y equals to k, a, l, where a is an index of technology. So where the most important thing is we have to understand where does this technology come from. In the models previously that we saw under the exogenous, Solow plus Menke, Ramu and Weil, they assume that technology is manna from heaven. What do we mean by manna from heaven? Meaning that unexplainable, right? However, technology depends on R&D, right? So this element of R&D was never discussed under Solow or the models that criticize Solow's model. R&D depends on human skills, education. Only with human skills, R&D are possible, right? So therefore, before we even talk about R&D, we need to talk about this important element called idea. So therefore, Ramu looks at the economics of idea. What do we mean by idea? So when I talk about idea here, try to recall, under the exogenous model, nobody discussed about idea. We discussed about labor, augmenting technology, right? Herod neutral, manna from heaven, right? We spoke about labors, but we never divided labor into laborers who produce and labor who produce ideas. What Ramu did is, Ramu managed to look at this distinction between different types of labor, right? So he says that idea improves technology of production. A new idea allows for more production or better output. And idea is not limited. We can't say that only economics comes up with ideas, right? Idea is not limited, it's broad, it comes from various sectors in the economy. Paul Ramu, he tried to formalize the relationship between economics of idea and economic growth. He says that the first thing to understand about idea is non-rivalry, right? When we look at goods, we can divide them into non-rivalry or rivalrous, right? He says idea itself is non-rivalry. Okay, what do we mean by non-rivalry? When the idea is already there, everyone is able to use the idea. Okay, that's the meaning of non-rivalry. Unlike when we talk about an economic good, there's very high degree of rivalry in economic goods. But when you talk about ideas, idea is moving towards a concept of a public good. That's the reason we say non-rivalry. Non-rivalry leading to increasing return. Why increasing return? Because production now does not only depend on capital and labor. We have this extra element called technology, which comes from someone's idea, right? So therefore, there's increasing return, and to ensure that this is possible, you need an industry that is not perfectly competitive. So imperfect competition is important. Ideas are different, right? Like what I explained to you, they are different from other economic goods. For example, if you look at CD players, lawyer services, these are all rivalrous. Why do we say rivalrous? The use of the good by one person precludes its use by another. But in contrast, ideas are not non-rivalrous. For example, JIT. JIT means just-in-time inventory method. Once the method has been created, invented, any automobile companies can take advantage, provided they have the knowledge to use it, right? For example, once a textbook is ready, anyone who gets hold of the textbook can use the textbook, provided you know how to interpret the content inside of the textbook. If it is an economic textbook, you need to have economic knowledge to understand. Once an idea has been created, anyone with knowledge of the idea can take advantage. For example, let's look at design for the next generation computer chip. Once the design has been created, factories all over the world can use the design simultaneously, provided they have the plan. Right. Okay, so what we are talking about is the paper, the plans are written are rivalry, because you need someone to sacrifice their time, they need to use their skills, come up with the idea, right? So the paper itself is rivalrous, right? We have copyright for books and so on. The skills needed to understand the plans are also rivalrous. The instruction written on the paper are not rivalrous. However, to understand the instruction, you need to have the knowledge to understand the instruction. For example, I don't think we'll be able to understand an engineering textbook. You need the knowledge to understand. However, the instruction written on the paper, it's available. But whether you can understand is a question. One important characteristic of idea is they are at least partially excludable. Okay. The degree to which a good is excludable is the degree to which the owner of the good can charge a fee for its use. So therefore, there are copyright, patent system that grant inventors the right to charge for the use of the idea. So what you have to understand is idea is the most important element to understand endogenous growth theory, because ideas lead to R&D. R&D leads to increasing return in the production. However, this idea itself needs to be copyrighted, or it needs patent, okay, to be protected. So therefore, intellectual property rights play an important role. Economics of idea involves potentially a large one-time cost to create inventions. For example, coming up with a medicine that cures COVID, for example, right? The one-time cost is very, very high. Patent and copyrights are legal mechanisms that grant inventors. So once the doctor has invented this invention, he has come up with a cure, then it will be patented. Patent typical period is about 17 to 20 years to 30 years, after which everyone is able to use the product. Okay. Now we are going to look at the Ramu's model. Ramu's model, please do not confuse Ramu's model under Ramu-Menke wheel that we discussed under exogenous. And the model that we discussed under exogenous, the idea of Ramu-Menke and whale is to bring in element of human capital. The only difference in the model was they tried to look at whether you can differentiate labor into labor and human capital. However, the Romer-Menke-Wales model was still exogenous model. So what's different about this Romer's model? Paul Romer, his model is known, is very famous, and he discusses about endogenizing the growth. If you look at equation 2.1, look at the production function. You'll be able to look at this extra parameter A, right? And look at labor. Labor variable is written as Ly. Why do we put them Y? So this is labor involved in the production of output. That's the reason why we have put Ly. A here means technology. For a given level of technology, A, the production function in 2.1 exhibits constant return to scale in capital as well as in labor. But if we are able to recognize the ideas as also an input into the production, therefore there's increasing return to scale. This is what Romer was trying to say in his formalized model. He says idea is non-rivalrous. It leads to increasing return to scale. So example, ideas to assemble personal computers, for example. So once the idea has been invented, the idea need not be invented again. To double the production of PCs, one only need to double the number of integrated circuits, semiconductors, etc. Right? So all you need is idea. So once the idea is available, you get hold of the idea, and the companies all over the world can use the idea to come up with personal computers, even though they are different brands. The accumulation equation for both capital and labor are identical to that of the solo. You need to know what is capital accumulation here. Look at equation 2.2. What's the difference here? K dot is changes in the capital over time. You have SY, but S here is written as SK, a portion of the savings used for capital investment, minus DK, depreciation. So now you have to look at another important element, labor. Labor, which is equivalent to population, grows exponentially at some constant and exogenous rate N. So if you look at 2.3, 2.3 shows labor is growing exponentially. In Solo's model, A increases exogenously. In Romer's model, A increases endogenously. So in Romer's model, the following equation plays an important role. A dot. A dot is the number of new ideas produced at any given point of time. All the while, all these years you have done your micro, you would have looked at a very basic production function, the Douglas production function. This is the first time you're going to look at the production function for ideas, right? So this one, A dot here gives you the production function for ideas. So how do we come up with this production function? In the simplest version, to produce idea, what do you need? You need people, right? So you have the first variable LA. Remember in the production function we saw earlier, we looked at LY. That group of labor, their duty is only to produce output. But there's another group of people. What is their job? Their job is to produce ideas, right? So you have LA. Okay, so you have the people to come up with ideas. So what do you need? How fast can they come up with this idea? So there you have the second variable, which is delta head, multiplied by the rate at which the discovery of new idea is done. So therefore you have equation 2.4. Equation 2.4 is the basic form that shows production of idea. Okay, let us recap. 2.4. So A dot is production of idea over time. Production of idea depends on, let me see if I can use the, okay. You need labor, right? So therefore, in Romer's model, labor is divided into two as given here. Okay, right. Labor is divided into labor that produce output, labor that produce idea. So there's a difference. Then you have the second one. Second one is, okay, so you have 100 laborers to produce idea, but how fast can they produce this idea? That plays an important role. So therefore, we start with this equation. Okay, let's continue. Right. So we have understood, we have looked at the very basic general production, general equation for production of idea, which consists of only two variables. Labor producing idea, or we call them the researchers, and how fast can they create idea? What's the point of having too many researchers, but they take years to come up with one idea, right? So that's the meaning of the rate. So the rate at which researchers discover new idea might simply be a constant, or it can be an increasing function. Okay, it can also be an increasing function. It can also be a decreasing function, or it can even be constant, right? So what do we mean by constant? It doesn't change. It depends on the stock of idea that have already been invented. Example, the invention of ideas in the past raises the productivity of researchers in the past. Like, for example, I asked you to do assignment. It's so easy for you all. Why? Because the idea or whatever assignment that you're doing is not so new, right? You are depending on some researches that has already been done in the past. This is what we mean. So therefore, this delta head could actually be also be an increasing function. Yes. Okay. So increasing function of A. For example, invention of laser, discovery of calculus are examples of ideas that have increased the productivity of the later research. The assignment that you're doing is probably not going to be an increasing function, right? Yours is going to be complete duplication, like what we will see in the next few slides. Okay. On the other hand, perhaps the most obvious idea are discovered first, and subsequent ideas are increasingly difficult to discover, meaning that, like what you're trying to do now, okay, when you're doing the assignment, what you're doing is not going to contribute to the collection of ideas or stock of idea, right? Okay, for example, when I ask someone to do assignment, usually what they will come up with is, can I do something on inflation? Can I do something on unemployment? But these are something that has already been vastly researched, right? So therefore, in those cases, we say that delta head would be a decreasing function of A, right? Okay, so the rate at which new ideas are produced, therefore, is given by 2.5. If you look at 2.5, it looks at just one element or one variable of the production function, which is how fast can you create the idea. So it depends on two. Okay, one is delta, which shows you the rate of new idea. The other one is the total new creation of idea from R&D. Okay, right. So we have looked at two important equations. We have started with a very basic equation. From that equation, we are now expanding the equation into the actual general production of idea. So we have expanded one variable, which is the rate at which the new idea can be produced. It depends on one, the rate of new idea. Second is the total new creation of idea from R&D. Right. So if you look at those two constants, which is P and delta, these are constants. This P here explains about productivity of research. Okay, if this P, the value of P is more than 0, this means that the productivity of research increases with the stock of ideas that have already been discovered, right? If this P is less than 0, we call this as a fishing out case. Fishing out means nothing to research. Everybody has done, too many researches has been done in the field. Okay, so for example, fish becoming harder to catch over time. There's no more fish to catch. If P is equals to 0, the most obvious idea to be discovered first exactly offsets the fact that old ideas may facilitate the discovery of new idea, meaning the productivity of research is independent of the stock of idea. So as long as P is more than 0, that is good, because whatever research is being done, it will contribute to the stock of new idea. Then, it is also possible that the average productivity of research depends on the number of people researching for new idea at one point of time. What we call as duplication. You may have 100 people doing research, but if all these 100 happen to be doing research on the same topic, we call this as duplication, right? So one way of modeling this is, remember, we looked at this variable called LA. This is the number of labor involved in producing idea. Now we add one parameter, which is the lambda. This lambda will capture whether there's any duplication or not in the research that is being done. So look at 2.4 class. 2.4 was our original equation where we found out that idea depends on labor and also depends on how fast the labor can produce idea. Then we moved on to look at the rate of discovery, depends on whether it's increasing, decreasing or constant, and also on the stock of idea that is already there, A power of P. P we looked at as the productivity, right? Productivity. Okay, now what we are going to do is we are going to bring in this element here, this LA in 2.4. We are going to replace this with LA with a power of lambda. This lambda, 0 takes, meaning of 0 is duplication. There is duplication. If lambda is equals to 1, there's no duplication. The research is pure. Research is contributing to the production of idea. Therefore, bringing all this together, we have this equation 2.6. Assuming P is less than 1. P less than 1 means there is productivity, there's increase in the productivity of idea. So this 2.6 is what we call as the general production function for ideas. Okay, please do not memorize this. Look at this. Let's look at this one by one. What is this A dot? A dot is stock of idea over time, right? And this idea depends on what? The ability of people in that country to do research, to engage in research, right? Okay, what is the first variable that is important to create, to come up with ideas? Labor, LA. However, the number of labor itself is not so important. You may have smaller number of people, smaller number of researchers, but no duplication at all. Or you may have too many people doing research, but there may be duplication. Remember, this lambda can take the value of 0 or 1. So therefore, you have the number of labor doing research, but that also depends on whether there's duplication. Then what is this delta? Delta means how fast can you come up with new idea, which contributes to this A power of P. What is this P? Productivity, whether there's increasing return, whether there's decreasing, whether there's concern. So therefore, you find that all these are the important variables that determine production of idea at one particular time, right? So therefore, class, there are two important equations. One is the production function. Production function looks at Y which is a function of K, L, and A. What we are trying to do now is to elaborate and look at what actually determines this A. So can you now distinguish and look at the difference between Romer and the Solo's model? Solo never looked at all this. Solo tried to explain, but he never came up with how the idea is going to be created, what is the role of researchers in the model. He never looked at, of course, he never went further to look at duplication. So Romer came up with this idea, right? He came up with this economics of idea, looking into in depth into what are the variables that actually determine the production of idea. Okay, so equation 2.4 is the basic equation. Then once we, what we did was we did two things from equation 2.4. One, we try to explain what is this delta head. So this delta head is delta in 2.6 and this A power of P, meaning that the rate of discovery depends on productivity. That's the meaning. Then second, what we did was we extended LA into LA power of lambda. You are looking at number of researchers, but at the same time, you are looking at the possibility whether there is going to be any duplication. So individual researchers being very small to the economy as a whole takes delta head as given and C constant return to scale. As in 2.4, an individual engaged in research creates delta head new ideas. So therefore, this lambda less than 1 means externality. What externality are we talking about here? If lambda is less than 1, it means there's duplication. Some ideas created by an individual researcher may not be so new to the economy as a whole. Apart from that, the presence of A power of P, P is also externality. P looks at whether the productivity is going to increase or not. Consider the case where P is more than 0. More than 0 is good. That means reflecting a positive knowledge spillover in R&D. Right? What do we mean by positive knowledge spillover? Knowledge spillover to future researchers. You want to do a research? You can depend on past research. That's the meaning of positive knowledge spillover. Economists call this as standing on shoulder effect. P more than 0 means standing on shoulder, meaning you have someone's shoulder to depend on. That's the meaning. The externality associated with lambda less than 1 is known as stepping on toes effect. Why? Too crowded. Too many researchers doing the same research. Therefore, you call it the stepping on toes effect. Right? I think we will. Okay, we will stop for 10 minutes. I've paused the recording. Take a break and we will continue back in 5 to 10 minutes. Right. So we have looked at the general production function for ideas. Let me just go back. Right? Endogenous model. So endogenous model is based on this equation. So Romer says that production of idea depends on the number of, let's say you have very high population rate, but that does not mean you have high production of idea. It depends on what percentage of your labor are researchers, right? So like for example, China and India, they are the highest populated in the world. But if you compare China with India, India probably the number of laborers are more compared to the number of researchers. Countries like US, countries like Japan, the number of researchers are huge. That's the reason why they're able to come up with new ideas. They have the fund, they have the financial aid to do R&D and increase, leading to higher production in the country. So therefore, labor plays an important role. The number of labor coming out with new ideas without any duplication. and how fast can they create idea, as well as what is the productivity of the idea, whether increasing or decreases. Okay, then from this equation, we identified that lambda and P are external, or their externality, where lambda looks at duplication, P looks at the productivity. These are both external factors, we call them. And two important concepts that we looked at is standing on shoulder and stepping on toes, where if the P is more than 0, standing on shoulder, we call this as a positive knowledge spillover, which is good. But if lambda is less than 1, we call it as stepping on toes effect. So now, how do we explain growth in the Ramus model? Like if you remember, under the Solus model, we looked at a steady state, where after a certain state, the economy stopped growing at all. Why? Because the economy depends only on the accumulation of capital. And accumulation of capital depends solely on the ability of the economy to do saving, because all saving will be invested in that economy. So therefore, what about in this Ramus model? What is the growth rate in this model along BGP? BGP means balanced growth path. Provided there is a constant fraction of population is employed in producing ideas, model follows a neoclassical model in predicting that all per capita growth is due to technological progress. So Gx here denotes the growth rate of some variable x along BGP. And it's important to note that per capita output, per capita labor ratio, and the stock of idea must all grow at the same rate along a balanced growth path. So in Ramus model, if there's no technological progress, there is no growth. Okay, what is the rate of this technological progress along BGP? So we try to rewrite production function for ideas 2.4. Divide both sides of the equation by A, therefore you get equation 2.7. Along a balanced growth path, if you look at equation 2.7, the left part of the equation indicates growth, right? So this growth depends on delta. What is this delta? How fast can creation be done? Number 2, it depends on the number of labor involved in producing ideas without any duplication. But this growth will be constant only if the numerator and denominator of the right-hand side, okay, this portion here, grows at the same rate. So taking the log and deriving, we have equation 2.8. Along a balanced growth path, the growth rate of the number of researchers must be equal to the growth rate of population. The number of researchers cannot grow beyond growth rate of population. If this were higher, the number of researchers would eventually exceed population, which is impossible. Researchers come from population. Population doesn't come from researchers. So therefore, this growth rate of labor involved in producing idea or researchers depends on the population growth rate. Substituting into 2.8 yields 2.9. So substituting this into this equation 2.8, we get this 2.9. What does 2.9 say? Long run growth rate of this economy is determined by the parameters of production function for ideas. What are the parameters of production function for idea? LA, delta, lambda, as well as P, right? And the rate of growth of researchers, which is ultimately given by the population growth rate. So therefore, under the Ramus model, Ramus is trying to say that with production of idea, there is definitely long run growth. Unlike what Solo said, in the long run, Solo had no element, he could not come up with any discussion to explain about long run growth. So what he was discussing about is there is growth, but after a certain level, the growth ultimately stops. Okay, what is the intuition? Intuition here, we are going to look at two aspects. One, if lambda is equals to 1 and P equals to 0, lambda equals to 1 means no duplication. P equals to 0 means the productivity of a researcher today is independent of the stock of idea that has been discovered in the past. Right? So if with lambda taking the value of 1 and p taking the value of 0, the equation 2.6, our general production of idea becomes, sorry, this first box here, I've written here revisit because we are revisiting 2.6. Therefore, with this values, we have this production function for idea where A dot is equals to delta LA. What does this mean? Okay, it means that the production function of idea with no duplication in the economy and the productivity of researcher today is independent of the stock of idea. Okay, so therefore this is the growth of the idea at a particular time period. Okay, now using this equation, suppose that the number of people engaged in the search of idea is constant. Let's say every year there are 100 people engaged in the production of idea, right? Because delta is also constant, this economy generates a constant number of new idea. Supposing, to be more concrete, we suppose that this delta LA is 100. 100 idea is being created every year. So this year you have 100. Next year you have 100 over 200. The following year you have 100 over 300. Subsequently you have 100 over 400. So initially the 100 new ideas per period may be a larger fraction, right? Over time, the stock grows, the new ideas become a smaller and smaller fraction of the existing stock. Therefore, the growth rate of the stock of idea falls over time, eventually approaching 0. So this is assuming without any duplication, with the productivity of research being independent, what happens if we have a constant number of research being produced every year? So we find that eventually it becomes 0. However, in 1990, Ramu tried to explain how to have constant research and sustain long run growth. So he says that since the growth rate of economy is tied to the growth rate of the population, if the population stops growing, the long run growth ceases. Or rather than talking about population, if at least the number of researchers stop growing, then long run growth ceases. So, right, if research efforts in the world is constant over time, would economic growth eventually grind to halt? So this is the question. So therefore, Ramu tried to explain that assuming lambda is equals to 1, now if the P takes the value of 1, so therefore our general production of idea now becomes this new equation where the stock of idea depends now on how fast the idea can be created and also the productivity. Here, there is productivity, right? So even though there is constant research of effort, unlike the earlier example, but here with the constant research effort, there is contribution to the long run growth. So therefore, rewriting this equation slightly, we can see that this version of Ramu's model will generate sustained growth in the presence of constant research effort, unlike the model that we explained earlier. So in this case, Ramu assumes that the productivity of research is proportional to the existing stock of idea. So therefore, with this assumption, the productivity of researchers grows over time, even if the number of researchers is constant. So therefore, these two sections try to explain what will happen if you have constant number of researchers. The first one, assuming lambda is 1, P is equals to 0, we found that constant research eventually it may come to a stop. But then Ramu tried to improvise by saying that if lambda is equals to 1 and P is also equals to 1, therefore long run research can be sustained, long run growth can be sustained. So therefore, productivity of researchers grow over time, even if the number of researchers is constant, because what we are looking at is not the number, we are looking at the productivity. Next, R&D. In the model developed, technological progress doesn't depend on capital or output, right? In Solo's model, if you remember, technological progress depended solely on the capital accumulation. But here, It depends on labor force and the share of population devoted to research. In Solo's model, he assumed that labor is concerned. He did not look at the contribution of labor at all. But here under Romer's model, Romer says that labor force and the share of population devoted to research, out of the labor force, how many percentage are researchers plays an important role. Once the growth rate of A is constant, the model behaves just like Solo's model with an exogenous technological progress. So now we want to look at what happens if the share of population engaged in research increases permanently. Right. Okay, right. To simplify, we assume that lambda is equals to 1, no duplication. P is equals to 0. The productivity of research is totally independent of the stock of idea. Therefore, we will rewrite. This is 2.7. This red box shows 2.7. Rewriting, we get this 2.10. So if you look at 2.10, what is different? We want to look at the share of labor. So this SR means share of population engaged in R&D. What happens if the share of population engaged in research increases? That's the reason why we are defining LA as the share of labor. Okay, look at this diagram. This diagram is able to explain. Okay, you have an horizontal line. This horizontal line shows growth, which depends on the growth of population, and we assume that this is horizontal, constant. Then we have an upsloping that shows the growth of idea over time. So initially we are at point, the first point here, which I have not labeled. Okay, what happens if the share of population rises? Okay, so as the share of population rises, we will jump from this point to a point higher, which is point X, right? Then eventually over time, we will come back to the original point. But please note here, when we say original point, meaning that we are talking about a point of steady state, right? Or if it is a normal economic situation, we call it as an equilibrium. So when you move away from this original to X, right? So we are looking at avenues where the research can grow, right? So eventually economy will come back to this. Coming back meaning you don't go back to the original. This diagram is just to show that the economy eventually will come to equilibrium. However, this diagram is supported by this diagram. Okay, if you look at this diagram, initially the growth increases, right? So eventually it has to flatten, it has to come back to a steady state. Let me just explain the diagram. However, the level of technology is permanently higher. Therefore, you need all these three diagrams to explain about what happens if the share of population involved in research increases. Let me just repeat this again. The figure shows what happens to technological progress when the share of population increases permanently, assuming economy begins in steady state. So therefore, it begins at steady state. So when the share of population rises, right? So initially, the share of labor for idea that is produced is equal to the production of idea and the rate of production. So suppose the increase occurs at time t0 with population of L0, the number of researchers increases, right? Because the share of population has increased. So you jump to a point higher, which is called as point X. At X, technological progress exceeds population growth rate, right? Which was shown by the arrow. As this ratio declines, the rate of technological change gradually falls until the economy returns to BGP, right? We are returning to BGP, balanced growth part. But remember, you are coming to a steady state, but a higher steady state, which cannot be shown in one diagram. Okay, hence we needed the other two diagrams. So therefore, a permanent increase in the share of population devoted to research raises the rate of technological progress temporarily, but not in the long run. Temporary raises, okay, but eventually it has to flatten. What happens to the level of technology? This is shown in the next diagram. The level of technology is growing at balanced growth path at the rate of GA until time t0. At this time, the growth rate increases. Level of technology rises faster and faster than before. Over time, however, the growth rate falls until it returns to GA. What do we mean by returns to GA? The level of technology is now permanently higher as a result of permanent increase in R and D. So therefore, it's permanently higher. You are talking about a steady state, but a higher steady state. Last one. Is the share of population that works in research optimal? Right? According to Ramu's model, no. Meaning that let's say you have 20% of the population working as researchers in an economy. Does that mean that as this share of population increases, does that mean research is optimal? So Ramu is trying to use 3 important points to explain that it's not the case. Why? He says there are 3 distortions. Distortion 1 is related to standing on shoulder. What do we mean by standing on shoulder? The market values research according to the stream of profits that are earned from new design. What the market measures though is that the new invention may affect the productivity of future research. Okay, recall that P more than 0 implies that productivity of research increases with the stock of idea. However, what is missing? Researchers are not compensated for their contribution toward improving the productivity of future research. Example, subsequent generations did not reward Isaac sufficiently for inventing calculus. Right? So therefore, when P is more than 0, there is tendency that other things equal for the market to provide too little research. We call this as a knowledge spillover because some knowledge created spills over to other researchers. We call this as a standing on shoulder effect. So why is this an externality? Standing on shoulder is supposed to be a good thing. This means that you are relying on someone's research. You are not coming up with a totally new research. Right? Okay, let's say the share of population involved in research increased from 20 to 30%. This increase does not mean there's 30% new idea. Right? So this increase is related to standing on shoulder effect. Okay, meaning that you are depending on some other research to come up with an addition, a novelty of your own. Right? So therefore, Ramu feels that with the share of population rising, if it is just a knowledge spillover, it's not optimal R&D. Number 2 is stepping on toes effect. What do we mean by stepping on toes? Occurs because researchers do not take into account the fact that lower research productivity through duplication. The share of population may rise, but every single researcher is doing the same research. For example, many at this particular time period, the number of researchers increased. Everyone is doing research on COVID-19, right? So what do we call it? We call this stepping on toes. In this case, externality is negative. Standing on shoulder is not so bad. You are adding on to a research that already exists. But this one, everyone is doing the same research. Therefore, market tends to provide too much research, other things being equal. What is the last one? Last one is called the consumer surplus effect. What do we mean by consumer surplus? Look at this triangle. Consumer surplus effect means that the creator is not compensated enough. The profit to the creator is given by the rectangle, which is PBED, or you call it PDEB. This rectangle is the profit. However, this triangle ABC indicate the consumer surplus. So the intuition for this distortion is very simple and can be seen by considering a standard monopoly problem. An inventor of a new design captures the monopoly profit shown in the figure. The potential gain to society is larger, right? Because it's the entire consumer surplus triangle above the MC of production marginal cost. The incentive to innovate, the monopoly profit is less than the gain to the society. Therefore, this effect tends to generate too little innovations, other things being equal. Even if there's patent is only for a particular years, maybe 10 to 15 years. After that, you may get some royalty payment, but as a creator, as an inventor, I may feel that I'm not compensated enough. In this practice, this distortion can be very large. So, for example, consider consumer surplus associated with basic inventions such as the cure for malaria, cholera, or discovery of calculus. So, therefore, what Ramu is trying to say is that when the share of population rises, that does not necessarily indicate optimal R&D. It depends on these three factors need to be researched. Whether the research is new meaning that there is complete novelty in the research, right? Then you can say that it contributes to the stock of idea. If not, it is just a positive knowledge spillover, which is not so bad. What is bad is stepping on toes, doing the same research over and over. Okay, there is complete duplication. We call it plagiarism in academic field. So to summarize, technological progress is the engine of economic growth. What we have done in this topic is to endogenize the process by which technological change occurs. How did we endogenize? We looked at the role of idea. How you need researcher, the economy need to segregate labor between labor who produce output and labor who produce idea, or we call them researchers. These researchers need to be given ample of space to come up with idea. Idea becomes R&D. R&D then contributes to the production and growth of an economy. An economy which can concentrate on this is the economy which has grown and become the tigers, right? Economies like Japan, Korea, US, and so on. Instead of manna from heaven, technological progress arises as an individual seeks out new ideas in an effort to capture some of the social gain these new ideas generate in the form of profit. Okay, so now we are going to watch a video, just one video, and with this video actually summarizes what I've just explained to you.
In our previous videos, we've covered how capital accumulation can spur catch-up growth. But capital accumulation becomes less potent as countries grow wealthier. Countries on the cutting edge grow by developing more and better ideas. But how? How do we get more and better ideas? Individually, a good idea, it might seem sort of random. Maybe it pops into your head while you're in the shower or just before you go to sleep at night. But when we step back and look at the creation of new ideas at a macro level, it's definitely not random. There are key ingredients that spur more ideas. Ideas don't fall from the sky like manna from heaven. They grow in the soil of good institutions. Let me give you a story to help illustrate this point. You might never have heard of the flying shuttle, but it was one of the most important inventions of the Industrial Revolution. The flying shuttle improved looms, making it easier to make fabric quickly and cheaply. And that made it possible for people around the world to have new, clean clothes. For the very first time, fashion became something that wasn't just for the very, very rich. The flying shuttle was invented by John Kay. Now, what did Kay get for his efforts? Weavers who thought that Kay's invention would put them out of work, they smashed the new looms, and they burned Kay's house to the ground. Despite creating one of the most important inventions to launch the Industrial Revolution and improve the world, Kay, in fear for his life, fled to France, where he ultimately died a poor man. I don't know about you, But if I saw what happened to John Kay, I might not be too eager to pursue my invention. Let's contrast Kay's story with a great innovator from recent times, Steve Jobs. For his innovations, not only did he earn lots of money, but also cultural rewards. Jobs became an icon that people want to emulate. This goes back to institutions and incentives. The institutions today in the United States have enabled an amazing environment for entrepreneurs to thrive and create new ideas. If you have a great idea in the United States and America, American institutions create good incentives to pursue that idea. You'll find incubators and venture capitalists who can help you start your business, laws to protect your idea, a culture that idolizes innovators, and markets that will reward you handsomely should your idea be attractive to consumers. John Kay could only dream of the sort of world where he could profit from his work. In the United States and in most of the world today, ideas are produced for profit. 70% of the research and development expenditures in the United States are funded by the private sector, and an even higher percentage are funded privately in places like Japan. So while an individual idea might seem sort of just like good luck, we see that ideas spring from places that have the right institutions in place to create new ideas and pursue those ideas. In the next video, we're going to look at one particular institution which is important for the production of ideas, patents. We'll also discuss the trade-offs of protection versus the sharing of ideas. And what role can governments play in the production of new ideas?
If you want to test yourself, click Practice Questions. Or, if you're ready to move on, you can click Go to the next video. You can also visit mruniversity.com to see our entire library of videos and resources.
Growth on the cutting edge is all about the creation of new ideas. So we want institutions that create incentives to produce new ideas. Ideas, however, they've got some odd properties that makes this kind of tricky. Two people can't use the same shovel at the same time. If one person's using the shovel, the other person can't. That's pretty obvious. Two people, however, can use the same idea at the same time. In fact, the same idea can be used by millions of people and then millions more. In the language of economics, ideas are non-rivalrous. Or we might say that ideas are made to be shared. We want to spread good ideas as far and as wide as possible, because the more people who use a good idea, the greater the gains. But there's a problem. If no one is ever excluded from using a new idea, who will pay for new ideas? And if no one pays for new ideas, then what incentive will there be to create new ideas? Let me give an example. It takes about $1 billion and years of new drug FDA approval. Second pill costs 50 cents. Imitation is much cheaper than innovation. But if anyone can copy the new drug, the price for the new drug will quickly be pushed down to its production cost, 50 cents. Now that sounds great, but that would leave the innovator with no way to recoup the $1 billion of research and development. So we might be worried that if we let ideas spread as far and as wide as possible, that ideas are going to be undersupplied. The US founders understood this problem. And so they created a special institution to incentivize idea creation, and they wrote it right into the US Constitution. In order to promote the progress of science and the useful arts, the Constitution empowers Congress to give to inventors an exclusive right to use and sell their invention for a limited period of time. In other words, a patent. Patents give innovators a temporary monopoly, and thus a way to profit from their idea before the imitators can jump in and push prices down. This gives the innovators more incentives to innovate, but it also means that good ideas, they don't spread as far and as wide and as quickly as possible. Patents can prevent other innovators from building on top of good ideas. Check out my other video on patents. It talks more about this. So we have a great dilemma. We want lots of ideas, but we also want to spread new ideas. And these two goals are in conflict. Navigating this tension is complicated. A patent is one solution, but how long should the patent last? 10 years? 20? 50? And how broad should the patent be? And how much of an innovation counts as enough to get a patent? Should we allow patents on new business methods like online auctions? Should Amazon be able to patent one-click buying? How about on genes like the breast cancer gene? And how about patents on new methods for teaching yoga? There are no simple answers to these questions. It's all about balancing incentives for new ideas and letting ideas free in the world so that other innovators can build and improve upon them. And here's another problem. Fundamental discoveries in mathematics, physics, and molecular biology, they're really important. But often, the more fundamental the idea, the more difficult it is to profit from, precisely because the idea has just got so many applications. If it weren't for Einstein's theory of relativity, for example, the GPS navigators in our cars would send us way off course. Yet Einstein was never paid for this application of his idea. In our Principles of Microeconomics course, we learned that goods that create spillovers or positive externalities, that they're undersupplied. But we also learned that we might be able to increase the production of these goods with subsidies. Government funding of universities and government research grants subsidize the production and sharing of new ideas. This argument for subsidies is strongest where the spillovers are largest, namely for research in basic science. Subsidizing universities or government labs, however, doesn't give researchers much skin in the game. Researchers might work on problems that they find interesting, rather than on the problems that consumers actually want solved. So instead of paying for the input of research, another idea is to offer a large prize for the output of solving a problem. Instead of pharmaceutical patents, it might be possible, for example, to offer pharmaceutical prizes. You win a large prize by creating a drug that successfully cures a disease. And then you give the solution to everyone. So the idea is spread as far and as wide as possible. One advantage of prizes is that they leave it open how a goal is to be accomplished. Prizes are often won with radical new ideas that no one was expecting. Prizes and subsidies, however, they've got problems of their own. Who decides what gets subsidized? Who decides what goals get prizes? Patents are profitable only when consumers value the new idea. Subsidies and prizes, they don't have to pass this same market test. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have subsidies and prizes. It's just another demonstration of how tricky it is to create the best institutions for producing good ideas. When it comes to ideas, just as with goods, institutions create incentives. We want incentives to create valuable new ideas, but also to allow ideas to spread as far and as wide as possible. Patents, subsidies, and prizes, there are three types of institutions that navigate these trade-offs in different ways. And each may be best at different times or for different types of ideas. Finally, there are other factors that determine the volume of ideas. More people, for example, means more ideas. Next up is a TED Talk by a handsome and brilliant economist who will explore some of these additional factors. Don't miss it. After that, we'll finish this section with the idea equation. And that's going to help us to predict the future of ideas and the future of economic growth.
If you want to test yourself, click Practice Questions. Or if you're ready to move on, you can click.
Okay, so we have done with topic 2, which is endogenous growth theory. I see some of you have left probably because of unstable internet. It's also raining here. My internet also is quite unstable. So I just want to emphasize, when I did trial session last week, some of you did not come online. We have completed 4 chapters. I did face-to-face with you on exogenous growth theory, and today we have completed on endogenous growth theory. And I've given you 2 online lectures, which is inflation and unemployment and budget deficit, right? Okay. So as far as your finals are concerned, I've already finalized what needs to be done. We are going to do 2 different quizzes. One quiz will be on growth theory, both on exogenous and endogenous. I've already formulated the questions. I don't want any of these exams to be on our lecture day because we have a few topics to complete and we have assignments, presentations and so on. So if you have no classes on Fridays, I am proposing that we have our first quiz on the 16th of May. Right? If there's any issues, please email me, 16 May. As I can see, all of you can come online. We'll be using the Spectrum platform for quiz. The first quiz will be on the 16th. 16 is Saturday, is it? Yeah, that means 15 May, right? 15 May, the first quiz. And we will leave 22nd May out because that's a Raya week. So probably 30th May, we will have the second quiz. The second quiz will be on business cycles. Okay, we will complete business cycle in the next 2 weeks. So that will give you about 10%, 20% of your finals, right? Your actual finals, the balance 40% will be 2 structured essay questions. I'm planning to have that on the 29th of June. Okay, to answer the 2 structured questions, I will open the platform at 10 a.m. I'll give you about 3 hours. You actually don't need 3 hours. 2 questions, you'll be able to finish within 2 hours. The 3 hours is for you to, because internet may not be very strong. So that's the reason I'm giving allowance of 1 hour. 10, then I will close it at 1. So it will be all structured. You answer during the period. So these are the dates I'm proposing. 15th May, 30th May, and 29th of June. 15th and 30th May will be 10% quizzes. 29th May will be structured essay questions. Right? So if there's anything you want to say, maybe you can unmute your mic and speak now.
Hi, Doctor. Just to repeat what you said, the quiz on 15th of May is on
growth theory, exogenous and endogenous. 30th May is a Saturday, right? That means 31st May then, right? 31st May. The following, meaning the week, the Raya week. Don't confuse me. 30th May, Friday. Can someone check calendar? I think so, right? 30th May. 29th May, okay. So 29th May will be the second. Is 29th May Raya week? The week after Raya, right? Yeah, I think so. Yeah? When is Raya? Raya, when is exact Raya?
23rd, 24th is Raya.
Okay, then 29 should be okay. 29th, you said 29. 29th, okay. So 29th May will be a second quiz. That quiz will be on business cycles. There are two topics under business cycle, real business cycle and the sticky wage model, right? So these four topics will not be tested in your structured question. Whatever I'm asking in a quiz will not be tested under structured. So structured will focus mainly on four topics: monetary policy, the Dornbusch model, walrus law, and portfolio balance model. These are the four main topics that I will cover under the structure, right? The rest for inflation, unemployment, budget deficit, I'll focus more on tutorials. And anyway, some of you are doing assignment topics on that, so that will not be covered under your final exams. Right? Any other question? Tutorial will resume again this week. I will create forums for you because I don't think Dr. Quek is very familiar with Hangout Me. Then she'll be able to access the forum. So what you do is you share your PowerPoint slides and she will grade you and have your discussion there. Or you can just email to her, ask her which is the best way to what kind of tutorial you want. Do you want it to be in forum, or you want her to come face to face? You want to have an online presentation like today? For environmental economics, I opened the Hangout. Students came and presented online, which was really, I thought it's better. You get to see me, I don't get to see you. I only see Pong Xiao Hui, Kai Zi Chan, all the names, Mirzan, Yan Chui, whether you are there or your mother is there, I don't know. Hopefully at one point of time, you will also show your face. Subjects for finals, I'm trying to focus on 4: walrus law, monetary policy. Don't worry, as we come to the topic, I will remind you again and tell you which areas to focus. Okay, these are the last few topics. Topic 8, 9, 10, 11, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Monetary policy, walrus law. Then we have the interest rate parity chapter. There won't be a question per se from that chapter because that chapter is application to the last two chapters, which is the portfolio balance model and the Dornbusch model, right? What time will the quizzes be conducted? What time do you want? You want it to be morning? 20 questions. I will open the quiz for 1 hour. In the morning, about 10. Evening what time? 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. Is 3 p.m. okay with you? Okay, yeah, so 3 p.m. Right? Both Fridays, the quizzes will be at 3 p.m. Right? So next week, I'll try to solve this issue so that everyone can come online and listen to the lecture. Next week, our topic will be on business cycle. Right? So what I'm going to do, I've already uploaded the lecture on endogenous growth theory. I'll also upload the recorded version for you to view. Right? If there's no other question, I will end now. Any questions? Anything you want to share? Okay, hope you all have recorded your attendance. Of course, I have created registration here, but I don't know how Zoom works. Hopefully your attendance is, your registration has been taken into account. Okay, if nothing, I'll end the meeting. Thank you all for joining. See you again next Monday. Bye.